In today's world, as the pace of life accelerates and the world becomes increasingly complex, it is impossible not to notice the growing chaos and evil that seem to permeate every aspect of our lives. The media almost daily report horrifying acts of violence, corruption, and the moral decline of society. In the face of these disturbing events, many Christians see not only the result of human weakness, but also the actions of unclean forces that are gaining greater influence over our lives. Demons, which have been an integral part of Christian teachings on the battle between good and evil for centuries, now seem more active than ever before. We see signs of their presence not only in direct acts of evil, but also in subtle temptations that lead to sin and estrangement from God. Many clergymen, theologians, and believers are increasingly talking about the intensification of spiritual warfare, in which humanity must face powerful forces of darkness. Over the centuries, the Church has repeatedly warned of the actions of demons, reminding the faithful of the necessity of prayer, sacraments, and living in accordance with the teachings of Christ as the only effective weapons in this invisible war. Today, in the age of globalization and digitization, demonic influences can take on new, previously unknown forms, infiltrating our homes and minds through technology and mass culture. Are we witnessing an escalation of demonic actions, or have we simply become more aware of their existence? What steps should we take to effectively confront them? Currently, paranormal phenomena and possessions continue to provoke interest and concern. Although many attempt to explain these phenomena through psychology or natural sciences, the Catholic Church consistently reminds us of the spiritual reality that does not always submit to rational explanations. Possessions and demonic manifestations, known from the Gospels and the history of Christianity, are also present in the modern world. Paranormal phenomena can encompass various forms of supernatural experiences, such as inexplicable sounds, moving objects, or sightings of spiritual entities. While many of these occurrences may be the result of autosuggestion, hallucinations, or natural causes, in some cases, their intensity and nature indicate demonic activity. The Church approaches such cases with great caution, always first seeking natural explanations, but also ready for spiritual intervention when necessary. Possessions, on the other hand, are a more intense form of demonic activity, where an evil spirit takes control of a person's body and mind. Symptoms of possession can include inexplicable strength, speaking in unknown languages, aversion to sacraments and holy objects, and extremely destructive behavior. Possessions require the intervention of an exorcist who, through prayers, attempts to free the person from the demon's influence. Examples of contemporary possessions are well documented by exorcists worldwide. Father Gabriel Amorth, one of the most renowned exorcists of our times, frequently described cases of individuals who experienced possession, often as a result of involvement in occultism, Satanism, or other esoteric practices. His testimonies and those of other exorcists indicate that demonic activity is real and should not be underestimated. Contemporary mass culture and media, integral parts of daily life, have a tremendous impact on shaping the attitudes and values of society. Unfortunately, in many cases, they become tools through which demonic influences infiltrate our reality. The dissemination of content promoting violence, immorality, and nihilism contributes to a spiritual decline that is part of the larger spiritual battle being waged in the hearts of people. Movies, TV series, music, video games, and other forms of entertainment often promote values contrary to Christian teachings. Violence, immorality, occultism, and nihilism are increasingly present in mainstream media. Film and television productions often glorify anti-heroes, trivialize sin, and propagate moral relativism. Examples of such content can be found in popular horror movies, which depict demons and occult practices as forms of entertainment, or in music that, through its lyrics and videos, promotes destructive behaviors. Online platforms have become the primary source of information and entertainment for billions of people worldwide. Unfortunately, they are also places where content promoting hatred, violence, moral depravity, and occultism spreads. The anonymity of the internet allows demonic influences to proliferate through various groups and forums that propagate Satanism, witchcraft, and other forms of spiritual darkness. Social media can also lead to addictions that distance people from real relationships and spiritual depth. Advertisements and marketing campaigns often exploit human desires and weaknesses to sell products and services. In this context, hedonism, consumerism, and selfishness are promoted. Consumer culture encourages the pursuit of happiness and fulfillment through materialism, which diverts people from spiritual values and living according to the teachings of Christ. Many contemporary media and cultural productions propagate the idea that there are no objective moral standards and that good and evil are relative. This moral relativism leads to spiritual and moral disorientation, making people more susceptible to demonic influences. Without a steadfast point of reference in the form of God's commandments, people more easily succumb to temptations and sins. In response to these challenges, Christians should develop a critical approach to consuming media and mass culture. It is important to choose content that promotes values consistent with Christian teachings and to actively support and create alternative forms of culture that inspire living in accordance with the gospel. Families should watch and discuss media content together, teaching children to distinguish between what aligns with their faith and what might be harmful. Currently, more than ever before in history, we are witnessing disturbing manifestations of demonic activity, which seem to be becoming increasingly common and accepted in society. What was once considered taboo or supernatural is now often the norm, or even a form of entertainment. The actions of demons, although often hidden and subtle, are becoming increasingly evident in various aspects of our lives, particularly in mass culture and new technologies. Young people, who are most exposed to the influences of social media, video games, and controversial online content, are in a particularly difficult situation. In a world where moral values are often blurred, and the boundaries between good and evil become increasingly vague, young people are susceptible to manipulation and demonic influences. The promotion of violence, hatred, hedonism, and moral relativism in the media makes it easier for young people to lose their sense of responsibility for their actions and become more vulnerable to temptations. The rise in the popularity of occultism, esotericism, and magical practices is also concerning. Many young people, in their search for meaning and spiritual depth, can easily fall under the influence of pseudo-spirituality, which in reality leads them away from God. Inadequate religious formation and a lack of critical thinking can make young people easy targets for the forces of darkness, which, under the guise of false spirituality, lead them down a path of destruction. Moreover, the danger also lies in the lack of a full understanding of faith and in a superficial, external profession of it, without authentic commitment and practice of its principles. Many people may consider themselves believers, but are, in reality, open to the influence of demonic forces through practices that are contrary to church teachings. Often, situations arise where people, not fully understanding or accepting the dogmas of faith, experiment with occult practices, magic, or other forms of esotericism. In doing so, they do not realize the risk they are taking and how they may open themselves to demonic influence, leading to spiritual confusion and suffering. Additionally, there is the temptation of religious syncretism, where people combine elements of various beliefs and practices, thinking it is safe or even spiritually enriching. However, such an approach can lead to the unconscious worship of the forces of darkness, putting their spiritual stability and relationship with God in jeopardy. Therefore, it is important for people not only to declare their faith, but also to deepen it through learning, prayer, participation in the sacraments, and spiritual practices in accordance with church teachings. True faith is not just a verbal confession but, above all, living in accordance with the gospel and God's commandments. Only in this way can one protect oneself from demonic influences and strengthen one's bond with God, who is the source of true life and spiritual freedom. Recently, during a conversation with a priest, he shared with us the story of a woman who experienced devastating consequences from engaging in occult practices. Allow us to share her story, which sheds light on the dangers of fascination with esotericism and the occult. Maria, a young medical student, had been fascinated by esotericism and occult practices since high school. She started with simple tarot readings and horoscopes, but gradually her interest in these practices grew beyond a hobby and became an integral part of her life. Over time, she began experimenting with spells, magical rituals, and communicating with spirits through so-called Ouija boards. At first, Maria didn't see anything wrong with this. On the contrary, she believed that these practices helped her understand the world and control her own life. However, she gradually noticed that strange and disturbing things began to happen. Maria started to experience regular nightmares, where she witnessed terrifying visions and unexplained phenomena. She often woke up at night terrified, feeling as if something evil was lurking in the darkness. Additionally, she began experiencing hauntings in her home, hearing strange noises and seeing shadows moving in the corners of rooms. During occult rituals, Maria experienced sudden panic attacks that seemed to come out of nowhere. She felt she was losing control over her own mind and emotions, and sometimes she had the impression that someone or something was trying to take over her. Gradually, Maria began to feel the negative effects of her actions on her physical and mental health. She often suffered from headaches, sleep problems, and general weakness. Her mental health also deteriorated. She became irritable, anxious, and withdrawn. As Maria delved deeper into the world of magic, her relationships with her loved ones began to deteriorate. Her family and friends noticed changes in her behavior and were concerned about her obsessive interest in the occult. They began to distance themselves from her, and Maria increasingly felt isolated and lonely. These events were just the tip of the iceberg in Maria's life. One day, Maria realized that the practices that once seemed like innocent fun had opened the door to forces she could neither understand nor control. Deciding to leave these practices proved to be a painful process. Maria had to go through a long journey of mental and spiritual healing to regain control of her life and renew her relationships with her loved ones. Maria's example shows how easy it is to get lost in the world of esotericism and the occult, often without realizing the potential consequences. This is a warning for all who are tempted by exotic practices to carefully consider what doors they are opening with their actions and what consequences this might have for their lives. Therefore, we appeal to everyone who might be tempted by momentary fascination or curiosity: firmly avoid such practices.